I'm using my size 6 brush and I am painting wet on wet some Winsor Red, you could use Cadmium Red Deep, and a little bit of red with a touch of yellow. So really combining lots of different reds here, painting wet in wet. To kind of create some light, mid and sort of dark red tones on the Cardinal feathers. I've actually swapped to my size 2 round brush just to paint the details here of the very thin feathers. I love that wispiness at the top of his head here, and I'm just sort of working my way around here with this size 2 brush, painting in these small details. Believe it or not, I've actually added some black to the red to create this sort of darker tonal value here at the back of the Cardinal, where the feathers have got a slightly different change in colour here. I spent ages trying to get the right colour, and actually black really works well with the red, both the reds with Winsor Red and the Cadmium Red here. And I'm just now painting wet on dry, just sort of blending in these details with my size 2, 4 and 6 brush. So once your painting is dry, I'm wetting the background. So I'm going to be painting the background wet on wet. I've actually used the colours that I used to paint the Cardinal with, but I've just added a pinch of black to them just to take off the edge. So the yellowy orange has got a tiny bit of black to it. I've added a little bit more black to some of the orange, and just added a little bit more red and black together. So you're getting these sort of more neutral colours. I'm using my size 10 brush to paint wet into wet, and it looks quite effective already. And I'm going to use the Bokeh technique for the background. And for those of you that want to learn more about it, I will put a list of videos I made recently in the description below if you want to check those out. So I'm actually painting in a little bit of black with a touch of Prussian blue as well here for a slightly cooler colour. And now I'm cutting in to the Cardinal bird here. I didn't actually wet right up to the bird because I was worried that if I wet the bird, the sort of darker paint would run onto the red. So I've left a dry gap there and just using the wet of the paint there just to paint in and cut into the bird there. I'm going to use some table salt. I'm going to sprinkle a little on the damp background. You can see there's still a sheen there, but it's not too wet. I'm going to let that dry naturally. It's important to allow it to dry naturally to allow the salt to work, and look what it's done there. It's amazing. So I'm going to use the Bokeh technique now. So there's my stencil brush. I've got a sponge there and of course some paper towel. So I've got a bowl of clean water there. I need my little bowl so I can dip my brush in or my sponge, and I've laid my stencil onto the dry painting and worked with the stencil brush to lift off some of the paint and then dab off with a paper towel to get rid of the extra sort of residue of paint and water there. So really work at it. You don't have to take all the paint off. You can leave a little bit of paint there, but you get a lighter circle, and try to sort of use all different sort of size circles as well. It's quite effective. It's a good little workout that actually. So once you've finished lifting off all your little circles, it's time to dry your painting. And what I'm doing now is I'm painting the little twigs and branches wet on dry, using some of the yellow mixed with the red to make an orange with a touch of black, and you know, really sort of varying the colours and painting them wet on dry, and then you can actually drop in colours wet into wet as well. I'm also using the paper towel to lift off to create sort of softer lights on these branches as well. You can go back later to do a little bit more of the Bokeh technique if you feel that you need to do more. I always think sometimes it's a good idea not to do too much at this sort of stage, and then you can carry on at the end and do a little bit more. So I'm just painting wet on dry here, this main sort of branch, using a mixture of the red and the black here, and I'm going to drop a little bit more of that orangey colour in, wet into it. So once you finish this first stage of the branches, you can allow your painting to dry. And once it's dry, you can remove all of the masking fluid, which is what I'm doing here with my paper towel. Once the masking fluid is removed, you can build up details and darks on your little branches there. I'm using small brushes, my size 4 brush, and just a mixture of the black and the red again, maybe a touch of the Prussian blue to cool it down a little. It really looks like snow on those branches there as well once the masking fluid was removed, so I'm really pleased about that. What I'm just doing now is I'm just building up wet on dry using smaller brushes, some of the details on the bird, the cardinal bird there, and just sort of mixing up some of the Winsor Red, maybe a tiny touch of black in the Winsor Red, maybe a tiny touch of Prussian blue, just really varying the colours and just blending as I go. So I'm working on the main area of the cardinal bird. That's the dark around the top of the beak there and around the eye. I'm using a size 2 brush, or a size 4 actually, but use a small brush, take your time and remember to breathe. I'm using a mixture of the black, a touch of the Prussian blue and maybe a little bit of red every now and again as well to vary the darks. As you can see, I painted the feet there as well with the black and the red, and I'm just painting a few more darker marks on the cardinal's chest. So it's a good time to allow your painting to dry again, and I'm going to be using some Winsor & Newton white gouache. You could use white watercolour or white acrylics. I'm using a size 2 round brush. I'm just painting a highlight in the cardinal's eye there just to really bring him to life. You can see literally that little bit of light in his eye really does work. I'm just painting a little bit of light as well on the top of the beak there just to sort of freshen things up a little bit. Sometimes you can lose details when you're sort of doing backgrounds and things like that. So I've decided to lift off a few more little circles using the bokeh technique with my little stencil. I'm using quite small circles. If you don't have a stencil, you could just use a stencil brush or even a sponge and just work in a circular fashion and just lift off the same with the paper towel. It works quite well. I thought it'd be quite nice to lift off some little bokeh circles on the actual bird to sort of push him back into the background but also pull him forward so he's all part of the painting. Now you may not want to do this. I'm also doing the same with the branches as well. I felt that little circle that I lifted off near the beak area sort of lost his beak, so I'm just painting that in again so that you can actually change things in watercolour painting, which is good to know. And I'm just painting a little highlight in the pupil there just to really give him a little bit of sparkle. And I'm actually now diluting some white gouache. I'm using my size 10 brush to get some bigger blobs. So do make sure you mask all your area out, your painting area. And I'm just tapping the middle of the brush to allow the gouache paint to be released onto the dry painting, and it looks very Christmassy, very wintry and snowy. So I think I'll leave it there for now. And here is the finished painting. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that it inspires you to paint a Christmas card. Maybe not necessarily this picture, but you know, the backgrounds, the bokeh background, the wet in wet with the salt, and also the spattering of the white gouache. If you have any questions about this tutorial, please put them in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel where you'll get updates of my latest videos. For those of you who want to learn more about watercolour painting, why not check out my Patreon membership? Details about that can be found on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.